Hi, I'm Frank Vucolo. I make furniture here from my shop in East Amwell, New Jersey. I usually work a lot in the Federal period, but today I'm actually working on a cherry bookcase with a couple of doors and drawers below it. And what I thought to do for this bookcase was to add some decorative veneer to the door panels and drawer fronts. And I'm going to use a technique called hammer veneering. Hammer veneering is done with hot hide glue. It is used to affix the veneer to the substrate. And today I'll go through some of those procedures with you, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So let's get started by mixing up some hide glue. Okay, to get started, we'll need to mix up some glue. And what I have here is 192 gram strength hide glue in a granular form. It's available from a lot of places. I got this from Tools for Working Wood. I like it a lot. It's a pretty simple process. We're just going to mix the glue with some water, and when it's ready to go, we'll add the heat and have something to work with. A very imprecise science. Try to mix up about what you need in a jar. So we have a glue pot here which we'll be using, but before we get to that process where we add the heat, we want to make sure that the granules are completely saturated. So no measuring here. Pour in some water. I usually get started so that the water's about a ½ inch above the glue that's in there, and then by just mixing that up a little, you'll find that that glue will soak up that water in no time. It's pretty much gone already. So now I've got a glue that's still very chunky and very dry. There's a little film of water on the top, but it's pretty much soaked into the glue, and that will continue to happen for a while. So what we want to do is just add a little more water. This time I'll get it to about 1/4 inch or so above, and we're going to let that sit now. Let that sit for a while, and these granules will continue to swell and soak up that water, and we'll come back in a bit and see what it looks like. While the glue's been working there in the cold water, I've gone ahead and plugged in the glue pot. This particular one is a 2-part pot. This can be easily taken out when you're working if you want to move around with it. It's pretty thick copper. It will hold the heat for a little while you pull it out. And it's just a very basic tool. You plug it in. It heats the glue somewhere between 130 and 150. I don't know for sure. That's all it does. There's no thermostat, no on-off switch. You either plug it in or you don't. So that's where we are now. I can see a little steam coming out. We're getting nice and hot. So let's look at our glue. Our glue's been setting up maybe about an hour now, and you can see it's absorbed all the water. It's like a gelatin. So we're ready now to put it into the water bath and warm it up. I don't know what the rule of thumb is for how long you should let the glue absorb the cold water. And I kind of go by eye when it looks like this and there's no water running around, and it's kind of, you know, you can pick it up in clumps. I think it's good. I just know it works. So that's what I do. So we get this now in the water bath and let it cook. I fashioned a little lid for it. Not so much a lid as a cover that will just keep some of the heat in and let it get warmer faster. While you're using the glue, it's good to leave that lid on when you can too. The water will evaporate out of the glue while you're using it, but the remedy to that is just to add a little bit more water, stir it up, and it's good to go. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we get it cooked and when we get hammer veneering. So this is going to have to work again for a while, maybe a ½ hour to an hour. I'm going to make a very typical frame and panel door. The stiles and rails were already cut, and we have here just a plywood panel. It looks like it's birch on the back side and cherry on the front, and I suppose that would make a pretty nice door. Cherries, Got some pitch pockets in there and decent figures, so I think that'll make a nice door. But to give this piece a little more interest, I'd like to see some more figured cherry there. So what I've done is I've gotten some cherry veneer, and what I think we'll do is we'll take this door and we'll book match this veneer on the show side, and it's going to look something like that. Get the figure to move in the right direction. This will be the top, so the plume will be kind of opening upward. Because we're veneering this panel, and even though it's plywood, it will warp if we add that heat and moisture and the kind of pulling binding effect of the glue to only one side of the panel. This thing will cup. So on the back of the panel, we'll use a piece of just plain sawn maple veneer. Let's get on with this process here. This is a veneer hammer. It's a non-traditional veneer hammer, and I don't like that about it. I wish it was. I wish it looked more like the veneer hammers that were used in the period. But I use it because, quite simply, it does a better job. It's got a solid steel head here with a brass piece attached to it. It holds heat very well, and it applies good force and does a great job. The other advantage to it is that using my glue pot, and let's see if we can show this here, because of that split head design, I can get this head into my hot water bath on both sides and clean off the residual glue, as well as heat up the hammer, because you want the hammer to be warm. You'll see that we'll have a minute or so to, maybe two, to apply the glue, spread it out on the substrate and the face, and then begin hammering it into place. The glue starts cooling quickly, which is what we want, because we want it to hold in place until it finally cures. But we don't want to prematurely cool down the glue with a cold steel hammer or cold substrate or cold veneer. So what I like to do is use a heat gun, and this is just a common home center or craft store heat gun, not very expensive, but we don't need much from it. Then use that to warm up our substrate and our veneer. So I'll just spend a minute or so going over that. It also tends to knock off any final dust particles. Not a great force of air here, but just enough. I'll try to get both sides. And just get this generally warm. I'll warm the metal of the veneer hammer as well. Again, what we're trying to do here is just make sure that the glue stays warm and workable for a reasonable period of time. Okay, so I want to put the maple on what is the back. I don't know that it matters, we're covering it, but I'll put it on the birch side here. I'm using a pretty generous brush, and I am not being careful. I am just slathering this stuff on to get everything soaked with hide glue. I'm then taking my veneer face down, doesn't really matter here, over that wet glue, and I'm going to put the glue on the back of my veneer. And I don't want to be chintzy on this, I want a lot of glue. Now I'm going to flip it back over. As you can see, I've got some glue on the show side. I like to put even more. A couple of things. It helps equalize the veneer so that the warm moisture is impacting both sides and helping it stay a little flatter. It's expanding at the same rate right now, and it is expanding right now as we're wetting it. But the other advantage to it is that it makes my veneer hammer, which you can see is more of a squeegee, slide nicely over the veneer, starting in the middle, pushing the air and the glue to the outside. And you can probably see that pattern forming. I'm moving to the edges. Okay, I want to get all the glue and all the air to the edge of the board to create a very thin film that remains. And what we're doing here, by evacuating both the excess glue and the atmosphere from between the two surfaces, we're simultaneously sticking the veneer to the substrate and creating a vacuum so that the weight of the atmosphere is actually applying pressure that's holding to clamp this. It's a lot like the way your shower curtain works. When you rub that wet shower curtain to the wall, it'll stick because you've evacuated the atmosphere between the curtain and the wall, and that thin layer of water is preventing it from getting back in. So you've created a little airlock, and that negative pressure causes the weight of the atmosphere to hold the shower curtain to the wall. With the shower curtain, that water will evaporate pretty quickly when you turn off the shower, and the curtain will fall away from the wall. But in the case of hammer veneering, as we're using glue, so that glue, instead of evaporating and opening the trap door so the air can get back in, it actually been setting up and continues to hold that seal until the glue cures. So that's kind of a little bit of what I understand the science of hammer veneering to be. So we've got that down pretty good right now. And we want to work pretty quickly because you know, again, we're trying to equalize the moisture content on this piece of plywood and keep everything, this is still very nice and warm here because it's been underneath the glue, so let me just with my hand to make sure of that. Start slathering some glue on this side. You get to be sloppy. Then we're going to take our veneer, and here's our pattern, so we'll do this side first. Notice I'm not joining this veneer in advance. We've got two pieces going down, and we'll do our best to create a seamless joint when we put it back together. I hope I didn't lose my triangle. I can still see it there. I'm going to get the triangle about to the center of the board. It doesn't matter exactly, and I'll show you why in a minute. That looks about good. Again, I'll put some glue on this side to equalize everything and to give my hammer some nice lubrication. And once again, I'm going to start in the center and hammer this down. Working to the outside. Because I'm book matching, I've got a lot of extra glue or extra veneer over here that I don't need. And once I get this relatively pressed into place, I'm going to use a very crude method of trimming it by just dragging my veneer hammer across it like that and get it out of the way. We'll clean up these edges later. Additionally, the edges of this panel will be buried in a 3/8 inch groove in the frame of the door, so we don't have to worry about a perfect edge around the perimeter. All right, so with that piece nicely adhered, I'm going to freshen up this glue with a thin coat. What I'm really doing is heating up the glue that's already on there. It's not so much as adding more. I want to get rid of that clump there. All right, second piece is going to go in this direction. So we'll get that nicely glued up. Flip her back over. Mind our triangles here. And I'm going to overlap this a strong 1/4 inch. Make sure it's about equal. Yeah. I'm overlapping this a strong 1/4 inch. And now I'm going to glue up this side for the reasons I've already stated. And begin the hammering process. Mindful that I've got a lip here. I've got an overlap here of a strong 1/4 inch or so. Working from the middle to the outside. And I'm pulling to this corner, as you can see by the residual glue, that's the direction. I'm not forcing this way because I'd be pushing excess glue in there to the middle. I'm pulling from this direction. I'm pushing in this direction. I'm pushing out. I'm pulling out. Okay, we're always going to the outside edge. I'm going to get rid of my excess here. Pull that away. Make sure I've got a nice tight bond, and I do. Pull some of this excess glue off around the seam. Okay. And I'm going to use a straight edge and a scalpel now. Take about 1/8 inch of that overlap here and cut through both layers. And we're going to get, when we remove the waste above and below, hopefully a perfect seam. In reality, this cherry will probably want to continue to expand a little bit, and we may have to do this one more time for a slight adjustment. So that's the top piece. I'll now peel this one back carefully. Just understanding the degree of adhesion here. It's stuck, but it's not cured. Now I can pull this 1/8 strip out from under here. Make sure I get some hot glue underneath here. And work this joint back together. And if this cherry doesn't expand too much from that new dose of glue, it's going to hold together nicely, and it seems to be, but we'll know in a minute. And when I had my finger underneath that panel to pull out that waste, it was cool to the touch. It was not hot. So it's like I said, you've only got a matter of time to work with this. You don't have a very long open window. But the good news is, if you make a mistake or you screw something up, by simply adding some more hot glue to the surface, you can reactivate the glue that's underneath there and rework it again. So if this seam wants to bubble up, and I'm going to keep hammering it for a while until it's where it wants to be, but if this seam was to bubble up, I would have no problem running the straight edge again, removing a slither, applying more hot glue, and resetting that seam. It's as easy as that. It doesn't look like we're going to have to do it because this looks pretty good here. Okay, and there you have it. We have just hammer veneered a door panel for the case, and there we have our door panel ready to go. When everything's cured tomorrow, I will clean this up on all four sides and scrape it to get the excess glue off, and I'll have a wonderful panel to put into that door. Okay, so it's been a few days, and I've started to scrape the panel. I've taken it and flushed up the edges. Got a good bond all the way around. And now I'm just finishing scraping these edges, making sure that most of the glue is off. If there's a little left behind, it won't matter too much. As I mentioned, with hide glue, it's very forgiving to the finish. And And then what I'd like to do is take a little 220 grit. I think I see a little more glue here than elsewhere, so I'll just give that another hit with the card scraper. And there we have our panel. And if we take a little bit of alcohol, we can get a good look at what the finished panel will look like. And boy, you can see that figure coming out now. Got a little liquid on there. And there you have it. We took a plain cherry plywood panel and with a hammer veneering technique made it into this very nice figured cherry panel for the frame and panel door it'll go into.